Okay, so a little while ago, I went on eBay and I bought an N64 used. So it came with a controller and a game and the console itself. So it just arrived today. And the controller here, you can kind of see in the picture that they put on the listing that it's a little bit grimy. It's got some dirt up in the cracks. But so I got it today, and it smelled like smoke, like really heavy. And so I decided to clean it off myself, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Alright, so I forgot to take a picture of the controller before I got started. So here's a picture of my setup. I unscrewed everything and laid everything out on a lid to make sure it doesn't fall off the table. So realizing that I had forgotten to take a picture, I put the shell back together because that's the main thing that was dirty. And you can see here that there's a lot of grime and yellowing on the thing, especially around the edges where the two pieces connect. There's a really dark spot here that really needs to be cleaned up. Around inside the buttonholes is really dirty, and the cord is really dusty. Overall, the whole thing is nasty and really needs to be clean. I don't know if that was from the smoke or if it's just like it was kept in a bad place, but something's up with it. So first we're gonna get to our sink and then fill it with some warm soapy water, and then you'll take your husk of the controller and rinse it off real quick. You're gonna want to get a toothbrush to help scrub into those cracks. It's really helpful getting up in the buttonholes and into the logos and such. So get some soap on your toothbrush and you start scrubbing. Make sure to get everywhere because you never know where you might miss something that's dirty. When going into the buttonholes, I would recommend doing this that I'm showing. You take the toothbrush and you move back and then push it down into it. It's the best way to get in there. There was a spot here that I could not get off, and so later I used hydrogen peroxide, and that got it no problem. So I finished doing this with the rest of the husk, and then I moved on to the buttons. You do the same thing, and the toothbrush is especially helpful here because the buttons are much smaller and they have much more tiny cracks and stuff. Although they are inside, so they probably won't have as much dirt, it's still good to go back and clean them. Alright, moving on. I took out all the button pads and laid them out on the thing. As you can see, they're very dirty, and I'm glad I took this part of the process to show you. This one especially has a lot of dirt on it. So I'm going to show you now what I do to clean them. And I saw this from another YouTuber. I'll link his video in the description. But basically you just take the bottom and you rub it on a piece of paper, and that'll get most of the dirt off that is getting in the way of the buttons, and so it should make it touch much easier. Okay, so you're gonna see me wipe these down with hydrogen peroxide, but it didn't really work, so I switched to baby wipes, and that got all the rest of the dirt that wasn't on the bottom just fine. It was really fast. Also, I did this with the rest of the tactile switches and they were great. I also wanted to note this one in particular because it was so dirty. Dude, look how fast the baby wipe cleans it off. It's incredible, and it really makes a huge difference. After messing with the screws, cleaning those off, I took a baby wipe and started wiping down the cord. Like I showed earlier, the cord was disgusting, and if you can see, you'll see later the wipes, how dirty they get. But basically, I went back and forth down the wire maybe 4 or 5 times, And then I also went with hydrogen peroxide it up, which made it nice and shiny and clean. So then, grabbing a roll of paper towels, I went over to the husk and the buttons that I had just cleaned and started drying them off to save time. I made sure to dab into all the little corners, and then with the buttons too, just shake them around in my hand so they get the water all loose. And although that works fine, a dryer is way better. So now it's time for reassembly. As you can see, I put the A and B buttons in, and do you notice how they have little lines on them? Those lines line up with slots in the case to help you put the buttons in. So you don't even have to look at what the buttons are, you just have to find the right button that lines up with the lines and slide it in from the back. It makes the process super fast and easy. As you can see, this one, I dropped it in the wrong spot, and so it doesn't fit, and so I have to take it out. Next, you're going to want to put in the pads over the buttons, and these are the tactile switches that go against the motherboard, and so they just click right into place. They usually have holes on them where they can slide onto a pole or some stick. These ones are thicker, the other one you saw were very small, but they should fit in just perfectly. You're going to have to do this as well onto the control board for the Z, L, and R buttons, so just be prepared to do that. Okay, so now we're going to put the control board back into place. And you'll notice that it fits right around some pegs that the screw goes in. It makes it very easy to slide in, and when you do this, be careful not to knock off any of the switches. Also, at this point, I would put the wire back into place so that when you put the top on, it doesn't get cut up. About now is also the time I would start screwing back the joystick in, and that way it doesn't fall out when you put the bottom back on. So you'll notice that the buttons for the L and R, they have a little slot to go in, so you just want to slide those in now. And then you want to start putting in the buttons, and the buttons have a little stick on them that goes into a hole, and when you put the case on, they won't fall out, even though it might seem like they will now. So basically, once you've done this, you're gonna put the back on, and you want to be careful to line it up with the screw holes, or else it won't stay on securely and you may break something. Also, right now I took a toothbrush and wiped it in some hydrogen peroxide, but then wiped it back down again to clean up this part because I had forgotten to do so. Then I put the case back on. Okay, now that everything's cleaned up and put back together, we're going to put the screws back in. Hopefully you set these aside so that you didn't lose them. Now, for me, unscrewing them and screwing them back in worked just fine with a regular size Phillips screwdriver, but you may not have the right size diameter, so you may need to use a smaller screwdriver if you have one. And there we go. Here's the finished refurbished controller. You can see how clean it is and how nice and smooth the joints on the buttons look. There's no grime inside the holes. Also, fun fact, paper towels are really useful for recording if you don't have a tripod. If you put a pencil in the paper towel roll, you can hold the camera up for far away shots, while putting it on the roll itself, balanced up on it, you can get really close up shots, so that's neat. Alright, thank you for watching. Subscribe for new video notifications, and check out some of my other videos. Thanks.